Every bomb that falls, every city that burns, every war that begins makes someone richer. While soldiers bleed and civilians run for their lives, somewhere far away, a man in a tailored suit is signing contracts worth billions. War may look like chaos, but for the few who understand its economics, it's the most predictable business in the world. From ancient empires to modern superpowers, conflict has always had shareholders. Every missile has a manufacturer, every battlefield has an investor, and every national interest has a price tag. The truth is brutal. Wars don't just happen. They're built, engineered, and sold like products. And once you understand how money moves in wartime, you'll never see the news the same way again. War has always been painted as a fight for freedom, honor, or survival. But behind every flag and speech lies an economy in motion. Weapons don't appear out of thin air. Tanks, drones, bullets, fuel, they're all bought, sold, and shipped through invisible supply chains worth trillions. When a government declares war, it's not just mobilizing soldiers, it's mobilizing money. Factories roar back to life, defense stocks skyrocket, and political donors suddenly find themselves with record-breaking contracts. This isn't new. During World War II, American companies like General Motors, Boeing, and DuPont didn't just fight the war, they fed it. When the world burned, their profits soared. Decades later, history repeated itself in Iraq and Afghanistan. While ordinary families sent their sons to fight, corporations like Halliburton, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon signed multi-billion-dollar deals for reconstruction, weapons, and logistics. Every new missile fired meant another line of revenue. Even today, when headlines talk about rising tensions, markets know what that really means: rising profits. Wars don't just reshape borders, they reshape balance sheets. And once you start tracing who benefits every time a crisis erupts, you realize something chilling. Peace might be good for humanity, but it's terrible for business. To truly understand war profiteering, you have to stop thinking of wars as moral struggles and start seeing them as markets. Every war begins with fear, but behind that fear stands a list of contracts, lobbyists, and supply chains waiting to explode into motion. The moment the first missile launches, trillions of dollars begin to circulate, and the people who control that flow don't wear uniforms. They wear suits, sit in glass towers, and speak the language of opportunity. Let's go back in time. During World War I, the United States declared itself neutral at first, but American companies quietly supplied both sides with steel, ammunition, and food. Firms like DuPont made fortunes producing explosives. Their profits multiplied by over 1,000% during the war years. Bankers like J.P. Morgan didn't fight in trenches. They financed them. By lending billions to Britain and France, Morgan's firm earned interest on every bullet fired. When the war ended, Europe was shattered, but the financiers were richer than ever. That's the first rule of war profiteering: destruction for some, dividends for others. Then came World War II, the ultimate business opportunity of the century. It was the age of total war, where nations poured everything into the fight. The U.S. government opened the floodgates of spending $296 billion, an astronomical sum at the time. Companies like Boeing, General Motors, Ford, and Standard Oil transformed overnight into war machines. Boeing built thousands of bombers. GM produced tanks. Standard Oil supplied the fuel that kept them running. The top executives called it patriotism, but in reality, it was a golden age for industrial capitalism. When the war ended, these same corporations didn't close shop. They pivoted. Tanks became trucks, bombers became passenger planes, and war-borne profits seeded the post-war American empire. But the real turning point came in the Cold War, when war became not an event, but a business model. Endless tension meant endless contracts. The U.S. and the Soviet Union built vast military-industrial ecosystems that depended on fear to survive. Every missile gap, every space race, every foreign conflict justified trillions in spending. The defense industry stopped waiting for wars to happen. It started preparing for them permanently. Think tanks and lobbyists began shaping foreign policy to ensure steady demand. The Pentagon didn't just respond to global threats, it created markets for them. Enter Eisenhower's warning in 1961, beware the military-industrial complex. The man who won World War II knew the monster it had created, a fusion of politics, corporations, and the military so powerful it could steer entire nations. But by then, the machine was unstoppable. Vietnam was a gold rush for weapons suppliers. Every helicopter downed meant another order. Each escalation meant billions more in spending. The tragedy of human loss became an economic stimulus package. By the time the 21st century arrived, the art of war profiteering had evolved. It was no longer about factories and bombs. It was about privatization. In Iraq and Afghanistan, private contractors became the invisible armies behind the scenes. Companies like Halliburton, KBR, and Blackwater ran logistics, oil transport, and security. charging governments 10 times what public forces would have cost. Halliburton, once run by U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney, made over $39 billion from Iraq-related contracts. War had become a franchise, outsourced, automated, and immensely profitable. Meanwhile, Wall Street discovered it could profit from war without ever firing a shot. Defense stocks like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman became safe havens during instability. Whenever conflict erupted, in Ukraine, the Middle East, or Asia, investors poured money into these companies. Every crisis meant a spike in their stock prices. The irony? The same investors who mourned global chaos on TV were quietly earning dividends from it in their portfolios. And this profit chain doesn't stop at weapons. There's reconstruction, debt, and resources. After wars, nations are left in ruins, which means contracts for rebuilding cities, refineries, and power grids. Companies that once supplied bombs now supply cement. Banks offer loans to help recovery, trapping countries in cycles of debt that last generations. Then comes the quiet extraction. Oil fields, mineral rights, military bases, all negotiated under the banner of help. For corporations, the end of a war isn't the end of profits. It's just the next phase. Look deeper and you'll find the same pattern repeating. Create instability, sell weapons, rebuild, control resources. It's a perfect loop of chaos and control. Governments justify wars as defense or liberation, but somewhere behind the speeches, a ledger is balancing. The real victors aren't generals, they're shareholders. Even media and technology play their role. Fear sells clicks, ratings, and narratives. Every headline about imminent conflict boosts advertising revenue and stock value. News outlets owned by corporate conglomerates often echo the voices of the very defense contractors that pay for their ads. The line between informing and influencing has all but vanished. War has become both content and commodity. And yet, perhaps the darkest part of this system is how normal it's become. Defense budgets reach record highs even in times of peace. Politicians accept donations from weapons manufacturers while voting to increase spending. In the U.S., the 5 biggest defense firms receive over $150 billion annually in government contracts. That's more than many nations' entire GDPs. Meanwhile, the average taxpayer, unknowingly, funds this machinery with every paycheck. So, when another crisis suddenly breaks out, when headlines warn of threats and leaders, speak of duty. Ask who's preparing the speeches and who's preparing the invoices. Because every modern war is fought on 2 fronts, one with weapons and one with contracts. And the second one never loses. That's the hidden truth behind war profiteering. It's not about ideology, borders, or even victory. It's about maintaining an ecosystem that feeds on conflict. The longer it lasts, the more profitable it becomes. The battlefield is global, the players are invisible, and the game is endless. If you think war profiteering is a relic of history, think again. It's alive, sophisticated, and more profitable than ever. The weapons may look modern, but the economics haven't changed in 100 years. Only the players and the technology have. Today's wars are fought not just with tanks and missiles, but with data, chips, and contracts. When Russia invaded Ukraine, stock prices for defense giants like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman didn't just rise, they soared. In the first months of conflict, Lockheed's market value increased by billions. Every new shipment of Javelin missiles meant another quarter of record profits. News channels showed explosions. Wall Street saw opportunity. Politicians appeared on camera promising aid. Behind the scenes, lobbyists drafted new spending bills. It's the same cycle, repackaged for the modern age, but today the battleground is broader. It's not just about land wars anymore. It's about cybersecurity, surveillance, and artificial intelligence. The same companies that built weapons now build algorithms that track data, predict threats, and sell intelligence to governments. Conflict has gone digital and so has profit. Defense contractors have quietly become tech giants, partnering with Silicon Valley to militarize software, drones, and satellite networks. A hacker's keyboard can trigger the same cascade of spending that once required a battlefield. Meanwhile, the media industrial complex amplifies fear faster than any propaganda machine in history. A single viral headline can shift billions in defense budgets overnight. Fear has become the most efficient sales pitch ever invented. Each tension or crisis alert becomes a marketing campaign disguised as national security. And while governments claim they're protecting democracy, ordinary people are paying the real price. Through inflation, higher taxes, and shrinking public services. Every defense budget increase means less for education, healthcare, and the environment. Yet few question it, because the illusion of danger keeps them compliant. Fear has replaced reason as the most powerful economic weapon. We now live in a permanent war economy, a world where peace is bad for business. Even global crises like pandemics or trade wars trigger the same response. Spend more, build more, secure more. The machinery never stops. Whether it's military conflict, cyber threats, or economic sanctions, the pattern remains. Crisis creates contracts, and as new technologies like AI-controlled drones and autonomous weapons emerge, the line between human morality and machine profit grows thinner. When killing becomes automated, accountability disappears. When wars are managed like investments, peace becomes unprofitable. In the end, the modern version of war profiteering doesn't always explode on battlefields. Sometimes it just hums quietly inside boardrooms, stock exchanges, and algorithmic trading systems. The faces have changed, but the motive hasn't. The pursuit of profit through perpetual conflict. And until that equation changes, humanity will keep paying the price, in blood, in debt, and in silence. When you strip away the flags, the speeches, and the illusions of patriotism, war is business, dressed as sacrifice. The same patterns repeat across centuries because they're profitable. But the real lesson isn't just about greed, it's about awareness. Once you understand how money shapes every bullet, every policy, and every emergency, you start seeing through the fog. The goal isn't to hate the rich or the powerful. It's to stop being blind to the systems that make them richer through chaos. Lesson 1. War never truly ends. It just changes form. The modern battlefield is financial. Nations don't conquer with armies anymore. They conquer with sanctions, debt, and control of resources. The real victories now are measured in contracts, not land. Lesson 2. Fear is the currency of power. The more afraid people are, the easier it is to sell them protection, whether it's weapons, policies, or propaganda. The only way to break this cycle is to question the narrative every time you hear the word threat. Lesson 3. Follow the money and you'll find the motive. Behind every defense decision or humanitarian intervention, there's always someone getting paid. True understanding begins when you start asking, who profits when peace fails? Because the truth is simple. Empires collapse not when they lose wars, but when their people stop believing in the stories that justify them. Awareness is resistance. Understanding is defense. And in a world built on profitable chaos, the most dangerous weapon is an informed mind. War may end on the battlefield, but it never ends on the balance sheet. As the smoke clears and the headlines fade, the profits remain, untouched, unspoken, and untaxed. The same men who funded the chaos now fund the recovery. The same corporations that built the bombs now build the cities they destroyed. And the cycle begins again. Humanity calls it tragedy. They call it business. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you watch the news, invest in a fund, or scroll past a war headline, you're seeing the gears of that machine turning. The question isn't whether war profiteering exists. It's whether we'll ever dare to stop it. Because peace isn't just the absence of war. It's the refusal to profit from it. If you want to uncover more dark truths about money, power, and history, hit subscribe, and let's expose what the world prefers to keep hidden.